The Triumph Trident 660. Look at it. Triumph's middle-ish weight, entry-ish level motorcycle. I had the chance to ride a Triumph Trident 660 back in 2021 because we actually gave one away. Some of you have been longtime fans of the channel. You remember when we had this bike and we gave it away. Well, guess what? I got another one and I'm giving it away again. Yes, so hit that link down below to yamanoob.co. This one's a little bit different. You only have until November 20th to win this motorcycle. Right now, if you click the link, we're doing 5x entries for every $1 spent. We also have a cool promo where if you spend over 150 bucks, you get a free t-shirt of your choosing. So don't miss out. Get your chances locked and loaded to win this Triumph Trident 660. You will not want to miss it. This is a really cool motorcycle. But today's video is not exactly a first ride and review. I've got a lot of familiarity with the Triumph Trident 660. What I'd like to do today is to revisit the Triumph Trident 660. Do the things that I thought 2 years ago still hold up? Do I still feel a little lukewarm towards this machine? Or has time given me a better perspective on the Triumph Trident? And how does it fit in today's current crop of middle-ish weight, entry-ish level motorcycles? Because a lot has changed in the 2 years that this motorcycle was released. So let's swing a leg, let's talk about this machine, and let's re-ride and review the Triumph Trident 660. So starting her up here, we have this cool little like kind of inverted LCD and tiny TFT display here. We'll talk a little bit about that later because I remember I had some opinions on that when I last rode it, and I still have some of those same opinions. As you can see, brand spanking new motorcycle. We have 10 miles on it right now. I'll run over to the odometer. Look at that, 10 miles on the clock. Brand spanking new. So nice. All right, I'll start her up. That 660cc triple cylinder making a little over 80 horsepower comes to life. And the first thing I got to tell you about the Triumph Trident, and I've developed a more nuanced opinion on it, but this is definitely still an issue. See this? No snap from the motor. That is one of my least favorite things about these new age ride-by-wire bikes. It's one area where the MT-07 actually has this thing beat pretty handily, is the throttle feel. Once you get up to speed though, it actually feels great, but for some reason you don't get that satisfying flick of the wrist. Swinging a leg over the machine, man, this bike just fits so nice, dude. I'm about 5'11", 32-inch inseam. I can very comfortably flat foot both over here. This has to be about a 31-inch seat height, I believe. Pretty lightweight, a little over 400 pounds, and it feels really nice. The steering sweep is relatively generous. It's not like an adventure bike where the bars frickin' come all the way back to here. But as you can see, we'll just do a couple slow speed maneuvers here in the parking lot. Really easy to just bank this motorcycle around in a tight circle any which direction you want to go. Very, very simple to get this bike going right where you want it. You feel very confident, like a lot of leverage over the machine. Feels really nice. Taking off with the bike, the clutch feel is nice. The throttle feel, again, once you get up to moving, very responsive, very accurate. But again, for some reason, at idle, just nothing. And I don't know, it's not that I sit at red lights and constantly rev my motorcycle, but I do like to hear it a little bit. Alright, so feeling it out here a little bit. It's a torquey little thing, I gotta say. I remember when I rode this bike in 21, it was Triumph's first debut of this 660 platform, this kind of neutered street triple motor. It shares a lot with the street triple, but you can never just like tune this machine to be a street triple because that's not how it works. The pistons are totally different, the cams are totally different. Everything about this machine is pretty darn different from the street triple. It's also missing that that wonderful whistle that the 675 and 765 mills have. So it's missing a teensy bit of that Triumph character and flavor, because that is definitely one of my favorite things, is how they whistle. So, rolling here on the 660, I remember thinking this motorcycle was incredibly sure-footed, handled really beautifully, and that is the case here again. Triumph make such good handling street motorcycles. The Bonnevilles, despite being a retro bike, feel awesome. The street triples are just so dialed in and so badass. And this little thing is like a fun blend between the Bonneville and the street triple. You get the kind of neo-retro classic flair to it, but it handles very, very well. We're rolling on 17-inch wheels, Pilot Road 5 tires, a great tire, super longevity out of these tires, great feel from them too, lots of edge grip, and I gotta say, like right here, I'll just kind of bank it over, and I feel very confident about the level of grip and control I have over this machine. Pumping on the front brakes a little bit, I actually really like the master cylinder on this. I've got a lot of feel from the lever. If I go here and just progressively grab a lot more brake, pop it off the lever there a little bit, trail that off, I like it. I can modulate it. I got a lot of feel through it. We're not working with Brembo calipers. We have the Nissan calipers, if I remember correctly. Yes, we do. And they're axially mounted, but they are dual disc, and this master cylinder feels really, really nice to use. The thing about the Trident 660 is it's very unique in this category. In the early kind of, entry-level naked bike platforms, there's not really anything that can give you a triple cylinder. That's pretty unique on this thing. We're gonna go ahead and pass this vehicle right here. Nice and safe. We just want to keep it hustling, keep it moving here with the Trident. Yeah, this motorcycle just feels very planted, very sure-footed. Pretty good amount of rev ceiling too. And I feel like I can have a ton of fun on this thing. The fueling, like I said, once you're up and rolling on the Trident 660, it's really dialed in. Yeah, you can play with this thing. Easy on those brakes. Can pick it up off an apex beautifully. It handles a lot better than an MT-07 from the factory, I'll tell you that right now. It really, really does. The suspension is much more dialed in, features a Showa front fork, and it makes a difference, it really does. But one area that I think the Trident 660 has strangely gotten a little long in the tooth is the display. I just recently came back not too long ago from the Royal Enfield Himalayan launch, where they have a round display kind of like this, but the whole thing is a screen, and it looks so cool. And CF Moto is doing so many cool things with their displays as well. I just find the Triumph display to just look a little bit old now. I'm gonna go ahead and pass this vehicle here too. So I feel like the display is a little small, a little difficult to read. I'd like to see a mid-cycle upgrade for this bike to get the display a little bit better. But I mean, look at that. I'm able to go wide open between corners and enjoy this motorcycle. This thing's a lot of fun to ride. And that's what's really cool about it is fun at basically any speed, and that's what I look for in a bike. I like a bike that is agile and nimble in the tight twisties, but also very sure-footed and can hold its own on a long, straight road, because we do have a lot of those here in Texas, despite having some pretty good twisties here in Austin as well, but we obviously do have to sit on the highway for quite some time. Yeah, enjoyable. That's the word I would use. It's better than I remember, honestly. And giving a triple cylinder in this category is really cool. And the other thing I think that is really cool is that Triumph now offers an entire array of bikes you can start from and grow into. When this thing came out, the Speed 400 and Scrambler 400 models did not exist. So this was Triumph's entry point into the brand. And I always had a little bit of trepidation about that, because I'm like, oh, would I really want to get someone to start on a Triumph Trident? And I'm actually going to make a whole separate video discussing whether or not this is a good beginner bike, because I do have some conflicting feelings about it. Because as an experienced rider, I'm having a lot of fun with this thing, but I'm just like, this is a lot for a beginner, And so now with the Speed 400, the Trident 660, the Street Triple 765, and the Speed Triple 1200 or the 1200 RR, or maybe even the Triumph Tiger 1200, depending on how you want to go. You have several branches through which you can progress in the Triumph, like path of progression. You can stay within the Triumph brand now, whereas you couldn't before. You kind of had to, maybe step up from a Japanese bike into a Triumph or vice versa, and it was always just kind of awkward if you wanted to get into Triumph. And Triumph also didn't have a super top-end performing naked bike like they do now with the 1200, which is just world class. That thing is a ripper of a bike. It's so much fun to ride and to use. And what's interesting though is, unlike Yamaha, where you might start in an R3, then you make your way to an R7, then an MT-09, and then maybe a Yamaha MT-10 or an R1, eventually, whatever, if you really want to go down the leader bike path. Triumph, the Speed 400 now is a single cylinder, but then after that, everything's a triple. And that's fine. That's like Triumph's whole thing. They've kind of leaned into that, kind of the same way that Porsche's like, we do Boxer 6. That's what we do, even though now they have 4 cylinders and V8s, I think. But, for a long time, it was like Porsche Boxer 6, that's it. It's like you come to this brand because you want this engine configuration. Triumph is kind of doing that. They're like, you come to this brand because you want this engine configuration. We do triple cylinders. That's what we do. That's what we're known for. But I think maybe they're pigeonholing themselves a little bit by not having at least one more different engine configuration. Well, I guess they have the parallel twins and the Bonnevilles, right? So I guess I'm just talking out of my butt here. Yeah, disregard everything I just said, actually, because they have the Bonnevilles, the parallel twins, the new single-cylinder Speed 400s, and the triple cylinders in a lot of different flavors. So actually, that works out pretty well. You can stay within the Triumph family and experiment a lot of different flavors of engines, which is really cool. Clicking through the gearbox here, I gotta say, one of my favorite things about Triumphs are the gearboxes. They have such a snickety, instant engagement on the lever, and they just feel so right to me. They really do. I just love the way that the gearboxes feel on these bikes. It really makes you want to shift even when you don't have to. Grab a gear down, grab a gear up. It just handles so beautifully. And it's very, very sure-footed, I really gotta say. So you think about competitors to this bike, you think, oh, RS660, Yamaha MT-07, maybe a Ninja 650. There's so many things now in this kind of 600-ish class where the lines are really blurred. There's lots of stuff that is like somewhat beginner appropriate, like a Z650, a beginner can definitely start on that. A Trident 660, An RS660, probably not. So the lines have gotten really blurry, and for the consumer, it's also gotten kind of complicated and a little bit strange, honestly. They don't really know what displacement category is going to make the most sense for them. And I think I remember talking about that in my original review of this motorcycle. I mentioned how, a lot of entry-level riders will see the 660 number and maybe get a little spooked, and maybe they'll look at the Street Triple 675 and think, oh, well, it's just 15 extra cc's for an older 675. I guess I could start on that. And I gotta tell you, the Street Triple 675 is not a beginner bike. Much that I don't think this is much of a beginner bike, to be honest. Because you see here, we're in 6th gear. You can roll on this throttle, and you can very easily do 80, 90, 100 miles an hour. We'll go ahead and try to click it up to about 100. Yeah, the ergonomics and the aerodynamics kind of get into your way a little bit when it comes to higher top speeds. I'd estimate this thing has a top speed of about maybe 120 if you really, really wanted it. Just because of this naked bike configuration, it's never going to be that fast outright, but it's got a lot of punch in the middle. That's the difference with these bikes. Like an MT-07's got pretty much the same thing going on. Got a little bit of gravel right here. Got to watch for that. There we go. MT-07's got pretty much the same thing going on where, it's like fast enough. Because like you see this in the mid-range here. Yeah, it pulls really nice. But it's not a top speed monster, so to speak. But I do think that that kind of punchy mid-range is where beginners would get a little spooked, to be honest. That's the type of thing where, you know, between corners and out of corners, add a little bit too much throttle, and that's where you're going to get a little concerned with this thing. But I also think that the fact that the Triumph Trident 660 has a rain mode is a nice addition. You know, it's going to make it so that beginners can maybe get this motorcycle into a lower power mode and get acclimated with it a little bit, even though I really don't recommend that. But I would love to see data from Triumph to show how many beginners bought this motorcycle, and I'd love to know down below. Leave me a comment if you bought a Triumph Trident 660 as your very first motorcycle. What was that experience like? Did you enjoy it? Was it a little scary? Was it manageable? And how old were you? I'd be really curious too, so let me know down below in the comments. But this is just like, this is what Triumph does best with these motorcycles. You know, it's handsome, it's not polarizing, it does everything you expect it to. And that's the thing that I think sometimes ruffles people's feathers about Triumph, is they don't, how can I put this politely? In recent years, I'd say in the last 10 years or so, Triumph has kind of gone a very conservative route. They style things and they do things in a reasonably conservative way. The most outlandish thing they have is the Rocket 3, but that's kind of like, you know, a heritage bike for them at this point. They've been making it for so long and they wanted to update it and make something new. It's such a zany motorcycle that they make, but everything else is, you know, kind of very inoffensive is the word I would use. Whereas when you look at KTM, you look at Yamaha, they're like, they have a very well-defined brand and a very well-defined presence that I think Triumph just doesn't really quite have. It's such a shame though, because these are fantastic motorcycles. Like, we've come so far with motorcycling that I'm sitting here on this bike that is, honest to God, like a perfect little like street roadster bike, you know, 80 something horsepower. You can use a lot of it. It makes a cool sound with the triple cylinder. Heck, even the mirrors work really well. They don't vibrate like at all because this triple is so nice and smooth. It barely gives off any vibrations that are nasty at any rev, really. Like here, I'll chuck it down in a second. I'm way over revving it right now. I'm at like 6,000 or 7,000 RPM just cruising here through the city street, and they've done a really good job of dampening those vibrations. It just feels really good to ride. I don't know, I think I was a little too harsh on this bike when I first rode it. It's actually a really lovely little motorcycle, and it works super, super well. Yes, it doesn't quite have the character and pop of a MT-07. Like, that bike makes a big splashy first impression, but it is such a nicer motorcycle to ride. Like, and again, the fueling and the throttle, once you get it up there, once you're actually rolling, I have no complaints at all. On-off throttle is actually one of the best on this motorcycle that I've felt in a long time, but that's something that Triumph does supremely well, is the on-off throttle feel. You go here on the brakes, trail it in a teensy bit, back in second, you barely even feel the butterfly valves open back up. There's no like shake to the transmission, there's no shake to the chain. It feels really, really pulled together. And that's the thing, you can tell this was made by a manufacturer that's been making bikes for a long, long, long time, and have learned their trials and tribulations and their mistakes, so to speak. And it's a really, really good bike. I can't really find areas to fault it other than that throttle feel at low RPMs when you're sitting at a stoplight. But again, it's not that big of a deal. I don't know, it's kind of like, I think about it this way, when I drive a four-wheeled vehicle, let's say a sports car, I'm not that concerned about the throttle feel when I'm not rolling, because that doesn't really matter to me. But for some reason on a motorcycle I am, just because I think on a motorcycle your connection to the throttle is so intimate, for lack of a better term. Like, I really like whenever I get on my bike, and it's almost like a ritual, I always just kind of flick the throttle just once or twice just to get that initial feel for what that bike's going to be like. And you don't really get that from this thing until you start really moving and you're like, oh yeah, like it's dialed in basically perfectly. But that's a bit of a downside in my opinion. But overall, it just works so well. It's such a pleasant bike to be with, you know? And what's cool about it is, much like the MT-07, the Trident 660 is a bike you could do almost anything with. You could absolutely do some sort of light scrambling with this thing, some like gravel road, forest road type of stuff. I mean, it has 17s, but it's such that the ergonomics are set up that, yeah, I mean, I could chuck it down a forest road. You could, I'm not saying go and take it down single track or anything super aggressive, but if you were to go and have a big adventure with your Triumph Trident, I wouldn't put it past you. I think this is a really cool bike to have in your stable to just do whatever with, you know? Like, if you're buying this as your second motorcycle and you don't quite know what you want to do just yet with motorcycling, man, this thing will happily do a track day. It'll happily do a long distance ride. I mean, this thing will gobble up miles. The seat's really comfortable, honestly. Like, I'm sitting here and I have no complaints from my butt. I've been on this bike for maybe about an hour, and I still just feel really comfortable and cozy on it. You put a little windshield on it, you get a little bit more protection, but I actually like the very even wind I get from the lack of fairing on it. It looks super handsome too. One thing I love about it too is, despite it being a triple cylinder, and you'd expect that with one extra cylinder on the side it would be quite wider than an MT-07, it's actually not. This thing actually feels more narrow than an MT-07, particularly around the gas tank. They've done a really good job of shaping the gas tank in such a way that it doesn't feel super wide. It feels nice and compact. This feels like a tiny, svelte little motorcycle, and so if you're looking for something more sporty like that, this will definitely fit the bill. But again, it has enough of that retro look and classic charm about it that most people will look at it and be like, oh yeah, that's a cool looking motorcycle, because it is. It's blacked out, it's got some red accents. It looks really nice, and it's something you can be very proud to own. And I know for a lot of you, the Street Triple is very polarizing with its bug headlights, so if you want the triple cylinder roadster vibe, this is plenty of bike. This is plenty bike for most people. This would embarrass a lot of bikes in the canyons. This thing's actually super capable. If this was a long-term loaner, maybe I'd take it out to the track and show you guys that this thing can really boogie and hang, but sadly it is a short-term loaner bike and I don't want to put on too many miles on it. Keep it nice and fresh for you guys. Okay, we're gonna hang a left up here and get a little acceleration test on the Triumph Trident 660. I'm gonna see if I can do maybe a little, 5 mile per hour to 100 mile per hour or so. We'll just do a nice fat pull with this bike. Show you guys the character of the engine as it accelerates. It's incredibly linear, I'll tell you that right now. It's super linear the way it makes its power. This thing feels like it charts a pretty perfect Y equals X line for horsepower, and then a nice flat torque curve. I haven't really noticed any flat spots or weird spots in the engine. Pretty much from 2,000 RPM, you got a great amount of torque. Roll on it. Feels nice and juicy. This is nice. I think the only other bike that they put this motor into is the Tiger Sport 660, and that's a really good little sport touring bike. I rode and reviewed that bike not too long ago, and I actually really dug that bike. I wanted to take it on a big long tour, but sadly it was a loaner and I couldn't justify putting 2,000 miles on it or so. So we're going to wait for the light to turn green for us here, and then we're going to see the acceleration potential of the Triumph Trident. Alright, rolling out here. Okay. Yeah, pretty good. It does a really nice job, I'd say, like 10 to 70 miles an hour. It feels really nice and solid. It actually revs out pretty nice too. Revs all the way to like 10,000 RPM or so. That's pretty good. I expected a lower rev ceiling, but it actually revs just about the same as an MT-07 or something like that. It feels really nice to use, and actually pretty rewarding to rev out to the red line. A lot of these 650 naked class bikes, you get close to redline and they're like, please God, please shift, for the love of God, have mercy. But this thing actually does a great job. It feels really nice, like you really want to use all that power. Alright guys, let's go ahead and pull over and render a final re-opinion on the Triumph Trident 660. On a little hill, y'all can't see much, but I can. So, Triumph Trident 660, re-ride and review. I was too harsh on this bike in 2021. Honestly, I was. This is a great little motorcycle, man. Honestly. I don't know why I was so hard on it. Again, I guess time has rendered me a more complete rider. And to be honest, less of a squid. I think this thing provides a lot of smiles per miles, man. It looks great. Look at this thing. That is a handsome little motorcycle. Rides wonderful, makes a great sound. Just put a little exhaust on it, get a little bit louder. That's what I would do. But yeah, just freaking go get one of these. If you're thinking about getting one of these as like a second bike, man, do it. That is a really cool option, and you will not regret it. Really, really cool little motorcycle. I will say I think I was too harsh in 2021. I actually think this is a really, really cool little bike. I do have to rate it better than the MT-07 nowadays, honestly. I recently rode the revised MT-07, and while that motorcycle is super peppy and super fun, this Triumph is a much more complete package for a very similar price. So, that's going to wrap up my ride and review. I'm going to rate this bike, wait for it, 8.75 out of 10. Nothing in life is a 10, and I don't think it's quite a 9 out of 10. There's a couple things. I do think that lack of low-end throttle is just a bit odd. Some of the build quality stuff is a little strange. We're going to do a whole separate video where we look at this bike in the shop and take a closer look at it, but some choices in here that I'm like, Triumph, what are you doing? It's a bit strange. So that's going to be my ride and review, or re-review rather, of the Triumph Trident 660. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to go check this motorcycle out on yammynoob.co. It is a giveaway bike. November 20th is the last day you have to get entered. You have to get 5x entries if you click the link below right now, and a free t-shirt on orders over $150. We'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later.
Keep watching Yammy Noob.